By the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Tonight, I will be having my Future Red Live on air and also maybe get a feel for what's in store for the future of our country. Then, I'm going to be asking if the woke era may finally be coming to an end. Sturgeon, Ardern, Corbyn, gone. Is this the end of the wokey-cokey? And speaking of Corbyn, have the socialists been betrayed by Labour? Where will the unions turn to now? Then, finally, I will dish it out with Narinda Kaur. Stay tuned for that. And don't forget, most importantly, I want to hear from you. Send me your views at gbviews at gbnews.uk or at Lots of Fox on Twitter. That's all coming up after the headlines with Tatiana Stanishares.
Good evening at 7 o'clock. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister says we haven't got a deal yet as he vowed to continue negotiating with the European Commission on the Northern Ireland Protocol. Rishi Sunak held talks with Stormont leaders this morning to try to resolve post-Brexit trading arrangements. He'll meet EU leaders in Germany tomorrow amid speculation a deal could be unveiled early next week. The DUP says progress has been made, but Mr Sunak says there's more work to do.
Well, the test that I've set myself is that we protect Northern Ireland's place in our internal market, that we protect the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, that we resolve the practical issues that the protocol is causing families and businesses in Northern Ireland, and crucially that we address the democratic deficit. Those are the issues that we need to work through, and that's what my ministerial colleagues and I will be talking to the EU about.
Lancashire Police has confirmed it's going to conduct an internal review into the Nicola Bulley investigation. It's after the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, questioned why the forces disclosed details of the missing mum's private life during a news conference. Lancashire Police has said she'd suffered some significant issues with alcohol in the past and struggles with menopause. It then referred itself to the police regulator. Around 1,500 ambulance workers in Wales will now join almost 10,000 GMB members across England in a strike on Monday. It's after the GMB union announced its staff in Wales had rejected an offer from the Welsh Government. Meanwhile, ambulance workers in the West Midlands have taken to the picket lines today, with patients facing yet more delays as a result. Members of the GMB and Unite unions are staging their walkout in their long-running disputes over pay and staffing. The Department for Transport has announced a cap on bus fares in England will be extended by 3 months. The £2 cap, which applies to more than 130 bus companies outside of London, was due to end in March, but that's been extended until the end of June. The aim is to increase passenger numbers, but also to help bus users during the cost of living crisis. People have been warned they could be without power for more than 48 hours after Storm Otto swept across Scotland and north-east England. Scottish and Southern electricity networks have said 16,000 properties are still without power, whilst more than 27,000 have had supplies restored. The Met Office says winds as high as 80 miles per hour have been recorded, causing trains and flights to be cancelled, and schools in some parts of Scotland had to be closed. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, you're with GB News. Now it's back to Laurence Fox.
Ding dong, the sturgeon's gone, pun intended. So is it the end of the woke as we know it? It is surprising how many lost memories from childhood bubble back up to the forefront of our minds when it is our time to become parents. Like some enormous download of stored wisdom, experience and guidance to help us for what lies ahead. We remember the times of sadness in our early years as if they were yesterday, and we attempt to sever that channel of emotion for our own kids. Likewise, we cherish the times that we felt loved and secure, and we do our best to make sure that we pass that gift on for our children to do the same one day in return. We fail constantly because we are human beings and we are imperfect, to say the very least. But generation after generation, we are constantly trying to improve the delicate recipe of life. Wisdom passed on from parent to child, repeating and repeating. Societies are like families in that way. Slowly cooking away, improving with every new generation, and until recently it seemed human beings had reached about as close to harmony that these deep-rooted imperfections would allow. The eternal genius of Martin Luther King telling us to judge what lies beneath these layers of thin skin rather than the colour on top of them. To work towards equality of opportunity for all, and to the end, the horrors of racism and segregation. That no matter who you were, there was a place in society where you would be recognised and represented. It almost seemed by the turn of this century that we were nearly there. In our affluence and leisure, we even took time away from our own worries to turn our gaze on the world around us and how it could be improved, nurtured and conserved for generations to come. And then all of a sudden, the whole intricate process shuddered to a halt and a great reset took place. A silent revolution had begun. Mankind turned inwards against itself. As Cooper mused in the wonderful film Interstellar, we used to look up to the sky and wonder at our place in the stars. Now we just look down and worry about our place in the dirt. It all began with language. We didn't notice it at first. We thought it was politically correct not to say certain things. We were embarrassed at the words our forebears used to describe others. We were happy to modernise and update our constantly evolving language. A little nip here and a little tuck there and move on. But for some, a little nip or tuck will never, ever be enough. Words themselves, even the most benign of all, became tools of oppression and violence at worst, and indicators of unearned privilege at best. There could no longer be justice, for example. It needed a modifier, so justice became social justice. Privilege, immutable by dint of birth, was odiously modified to the exclusive property of anyone with vaguely pinkish skin. Perhaps most ridiculous of all being that in our desperate desire to eradicate Granny's rather embarrassing utterances whenever she called someone a coloured person, we just reversed the order of the words and everything was just dandy. Person of colour? Fine. Coloured person? Bigoted, racist, devil. Distinction without a difference in the war for words. Language stopped becoming a way in which we would communicate and connect with each other and started to become a means of exerting power and control over each other. People started to keep their mouths shut for fear of stepping on a linguistic landmine which could destroy their entire life. Today, polling reveals half of Great Britain are frightened to speak their own minds, and that can't be good. But why stop there? Wondered the leisured ideologues aimlessly plodding the corridors of our universities, institutions and seats of government, looking to bring about the great change. Why just modify words when you can change their entire meanings altogether? And we're better to start than man and woman. At some point during this dizzying decline in peaceful human improvement, those who seek power and control over us for our own improvement turn their eyes on simple biology. There is no such thing as male or female. Those two immutable and entirely different sexes suddenly became a scale. One could, in one's narcissism, place oneself self-importantly on wherever one liked. Today, identity matters far more than actual reality. This obviously has a few predictable drawbacks, such as broad-shouldered men with autogynephilic fetishes, putting on a women's swimming costume, hopping in the pool, beating women sounding competition, then popping to the dressing room to ditch his costume and offer glimpses of his penis to the girls whose sporting futures he'd just destroyed. The girls were instructed to be silent and not to voice their fear at sharing protected private spaces with a dude, or even at the unfairness of it all, but for fear of future repercussions from their entirely understandable fury. But swimming races and penises in dressing rooms are one thing. Violent rapists in female prisons are something entirely different. As we saw this week, common sense and reality came home to roost for one of the speech suppressors in chief, the Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. First, there was the highly controversial Gender Recognition Reform Bill, which was returned to sender shortly after it arrived in Westminster. Then came the 50-second interview, which starkly revealed the ridiculousness of the woke ideology to the public. We can't show it on here because it belongs to ITV, but let me give it a go like this. It went, are trans women women? Well, yeah, but no, but can they go to prison? I don't know, I'm not sure. It's like Vicky Pollard and Jimmy Kranke's love child. Anyway, convicted rapist Adam Graham had decided to chuck on a wig, call himself Isla, and was no doubt salivating at the idea of sharing his sentence locked up alongside some potential future victims. But it seemed this time the public just couldn't take the madness anymore. The backlash forced Nicola into a hurried retreat and announced that Adam wouldn't be getting the holiday of his dreams after all, and the First Minister of Woke and her cronies who wished to police speech around the family dinner table had gone just one step too far. A sudden awakening from the wokery seized the public, and she is now, thankfully, bye-bye. You see, that's all it takes, really. People to stand up and say, no thanks, not interested, don't want this stuff anymore, to this insidious secular religion, which is a danger to the existence of women, delights in the sacrifice of the mutilation of children, hates the family and the passing on of wisdom in favour of celebration of the self and all the darkness which comes with it, and which has damaged societal discourse and, most importantly, freedom of speech, without which democracy is an illusion, in such a fundamental way. It can be stopped when confronted head-on, as we have seen with Nicola. It is my hope that the fall of the Sturgeon signals the beginning of the end of this ideological woke supremacism. And when future generations look back at this era of fundamentalist nihilism, they remind themselves of just how easily the complex intricacies of societal harmony can be destroyed in an instant. So, tonight I'm asking you, is this the end of the woke as we know it? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet at gbnews or at LozAvox.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, hello, hello. Joining me to discuss this issue is Benjamin Butterworth, broadcaster and journalist. Ben, is it the end of woke as we know it?
No, I find it kind of ridiculous, right? Because you've got all these people saying, oh, Jacinda Ardern's gone and now Nicola Sturgeon, so, you know, go woke, go broke. I mean, Jacinda Ardern was in for 5.5 years. Nicola Sturgeon was in for 7.5 years. It's pretty rich to claim that their politics wasn't popular. There is no politician since Tony Blair, who I'm sure you'd call woke, who has been as electorally successful, spent so long in office as Nicola Sturgeon. I think that shows that if you go woke, get elected.
Go woke, get elected?
Yeah.
So you think we're seeing the rise of woke identity politics, more of it?
I mean, I kind of hate the idea of identity politics because I don't accept that it's really a thing, right? It's just people living their lives as viscerally as you live yours as a white bloke, right? The things that you clutch to in your identity are just what gay or trans people are doing in the same way. I don't think that is actually such a radical departure. But, you know, if you were looking at how to win elections in Scotland, you would look at what Nicola Sturgeon's been doing because the SNP...
Stoke nationalism.
You know, I wouldn't personally go for the SNP, but they're clearly on course to have the most seats at the next Holyrood elections.
What would happen if we did that in England? If we had a highly nationalistic party in England, wouldn't we condemn that?
Well, we have a Conservative government, so I think they did quite well out of it as well.
Have you seen it?
Well, I mean, it always struck me as really quite weird that people on the right of the Conservative Party celebrated Boris Johnson, because as far as I could see, his actual policies weren't a million miles from Tony Blair, which gave me some cause to be ease about the world.
You felt better about it that way?
I did. I mean, I'm certainly not going to go out, you know, chanting for him, but I think this idea that woke is over is just a nonsense. And actually, if you look at the course of history, if you look at the last 30 years of politics in this country and maybe 20 years in the US, the kind of ideas that people are calling woke, things like gay rights, things like awareness of transgender people, things like racial politics changing...
I'm not sure that's what people are upset about when it comes to attacking woke stuff. I think people are more upset about, you know, the transitioning of children and the teaching to children of critical race theory and stuff like that. Stuff's more on the thicker end of the wedge.
But, I mean, well, first of all, I think the idea that kids are being taught critical race theory... I mean,
they are. I've got the stuff from my own child's school. They talk about white privilege, skin colour privilege in PHSE and RSE. Well,
I mean, I think when it comes to things like, you know, being aware of white privilege and of the context in which Britain exists, I think that's a useful thing. I don't think we should rewrite history.
No one's trying to rewrite history, but we can't go back and change it, can we? So
we can change the future, though, and the situation we're in is shaped by the world we've come from.
But the situation we're in is, in my view, the most divided society has ever been, and that's based around identity politics. And identity politics is horrible because, you know, it encourages division. So what do you think this woke thing means to you?
Well, hang on. First of all, we're not in the most divided country. The truth is that, well, in the most polite...
Half of the people in this country are frightened to open their mouths.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are. They're polled.
Well,
polled them.
You're clearly not.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
The truth is, I'm afraid, that rich, straight, white blokes like yourself feel threatened because there are people from minority groups, people who haven't had power historically, who are claiming their power.
By anybody. I just don't like people being racist to me.
Yeah, but I remember side of the flat I just moved out of, actually, you complained about the same-sex couples on the traffic lights, right? Why would things like that be alarming? That's just celebrating different types of relationships in the world.
I don't want political traffic lights.
But they're not political, they're just
everywhere.
fun.
Can we not just have a green light? It's not. I'm not complaining. I'm not like, I can't bear it. I'm just going, is there any aspect of life that we can remove politics for? I don't have to go, we had a zebra crossing and now we've got a trans crossing. I mean, it's like, who cares? I don't want politicised roads either. I don't want Black Lives Matter written down the road in the same way as I don't want White Lives Matter written down the middle of a road.
But I think it is brilliant to have a society where people feel like they're represented, where they're visible.
Your pale, stale males who apparently just feel really bad that they're being challenged.
I mean, you still have an easier route in life by your description as a human being.
Absolutely everything. My entire income and everything for saying this was a tolerant country. So please don't say to me, I have an easy path through life. I had to rebuild from £0.
But the way in which you got there will have been helped by being a straight white man with a financially secure family to come from.
What about straight white, straight black men who've got loads of privilege, who my old school, Harrow, was full of?
Yeah, I mean, these things are...
Nigerian princes, Russian people, you know, people from the Far East. These people who now have Instagram accounts with 15 Bentleys and then with girls draped across them. Do they have white privilege?
I mean, if they're looking for a husband, I'd be interested in a man with 15 Bentleys.
I'll set you up.
But let me tell you, Edward Enninful, who's the editor of British Vogue and has been at British Vogue for, I think, something like 20 years in different roles, when he turned up to the office in a suit, I'm sure a very nice suit, he was sent to the delivery entrance. He was told by security to go... They thought he was a delivery man. That was clearly because he's black. Now, he is a wealthy, successful
Michelle Obama goes
black
on about
person.
this all the time as well.
But doesn't that show...
It's like, I'm so bored of people that are billionaires telling me that how much they suffer. It's like, is the Martha's Vineyard mansion
a bit of self-awareness wouldn't go amiss with that remark.
Well, for them as well.
But I tell you what, when Edward Enninful went to Vogue House, and they assumed that he was a delivery man, that was clearly racism. So the fact that he is...
It's direct racism, and it should be stood against.
The fact that he is presumably pretty wealthy and obviously very well connected didn't matter. All they saw was a black person. That is racism.
That's all one person saw was a black person. Yeah. Not the whole of the country. That's all one person. Some person, an idiot person, or just thought, oh, you must be the delivery guy. But also,
I honestly don't think...
A direct piece of racism like that and sort of bigotry, we would stand against. But you can't present the whole of all of white men being scared about the fact that there are people from other ethnicities coming up. We celebrate that. We fight for that. That's what Britain is so progressive about. That's why we're a progressive, wonderful country.
I don't believe for a split second that had you or I, and I look a bit dishevelled today.
You look hot.
Even in this, thank you. Do you have 15 Bentleys? Because then maybe we can...
I've got a slightly dented Volvo XC60.
Never mind, it won't work, Laurence.
Come on.
But I think if we had walked into that office, they wouldn't have made that assumption, OK? It had everything to do with race. And you talk about Britain being divided. If you go back 50, 60 years, 1967, it was literally illegal to be gay or to have a certain practice. OK, that is a far more divided society, and you said it has never been more divided.
What I was trying to... OK, sorry, I'm being annoying as well because I'm interrupting you and not letting you finish your point. But yes, the chemical castration of gay men is just appalling.
The one that gives us our freedom, Alan Turing.
Yeah, exactly. But we entered a period in society where there was a place for everybody of any skin colour and sexual orientation, and it just feels to me like we've gone that... We're going, right, what are we going to do? What are we going to improve next? And it's not actually bringing harmony, it's creating division.
I wish we lived in that kind of society. You know, I'm 30 years old, and even I, being relatively young, went to school when Section 28, which banned the promotion, so-called promotion of homosexuality by local councils and council-run schools, that was in place when I was in secondary school, right? And I'm only 30 years old. So the idea that you have a generation of people, that we've reached this utopia where everyone has freedom in the first place, it's just not true.
I didn't say utopia. What I said was we were making progress, and we continue to make progress. But by, you know, I think you'd really, really struggle to find a huge amount of homophobia, certainly in London. I mean... And, you know, and around this country. I think people really accept people. In fact, I polled them, and their tolerance towards people who are trans, gay, you know, anything, the LGBTQ++ so-called community, is hugely tolerant. What there isn't a tolerance for is telling white people that they're all racist and privileged, People don't like being told that, and they don't like kids being hyper-racialised in school or hypersexualised in school. Do you think that is there somewhere where we could find some common ground to say, you know what, it's good not to teach 10-year-olds that they might be girls? They could be gay.
But I don't accept that framing of it at all, because when you talk about, when you use the phrase hypersexualised, I assume what you're referencing is sex and relationship education, which now starts in the latter stages of primary school. Now, the truth is, it is relationship education. It is, aside from biological facts that one might need to know at 10 or 11 years old, which clearly is necessary for people to know, it is about understanding the world you live in. And actually, I think that kind of relationship education at primary school age is extremely important, because it arguably reduces the chances of those kids being victim to paedophiles, to sex attackers, because if they know and value their body and what a relationship looks like, they can stand up to someone who's trying to abuse that. Quite the reverse to what some people would claim.
I think it's a fair point that you make, but I would disagree and just say that I think when I was young, I was taught, don't get into a car with strangers and don't let anyone touch your bits. But that's how it is. Benjamin Butterworth, thank you so much.
Thank you
for joining me. Right, thank you, Benjamin. Coming up next, I will have my future read live on air, because that's so much more important than the country's. And also, I'll maybe get a feel for what's in store for the future. See you in 3.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hiya. With the country in the state that it is, and no one seemingly able to give us any answers as to what and why is happening, or what is going to have to happen, I've decided to consult an actual expert, someone who can give us a prediction we can all get behind. So joining me now is Tracy Woollerton, empath, psychic and medium. Good evening, Tracy, how are you?
Good evening, I'm fine, how are you?
I'm very good. Now, before we get to the boring stuff, like the future of Great Britain and how it's going to go, what does the future hold for Laurence Fox?
Well, yeah. Where I was told I see colours of blue.
Blue? But what, I mean, am I going to be all right? Just checking.
Are you going to be all right? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But I need a more solid. I need a more solid reading.
Okay, let's. Shall I get my cards out to do the reading?
Yes, do the cards.
Yes. Okay. Oh my God, a yes has shown up straight away.
Dude.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to pick out 3 cards for you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to shuffle them, and I'm going to see what holds for you. Oh, this is a good card. As you can't see, it's a choosing freedom. It's making decisions, and a card has fell out. A card says, "Don't worry about upsetting people. You're not one for procrastinating. There's big decisions that you've been putting on hold, but you are heading in the right direction."
Brilliant.
Okay. And then the last card is, okay, don't let anything hold you back. Look around you. There's new journeys. If there's things that, like I said, on the last card that's been put on hold, stop procrastinating, move forward, and take on new challenges.
Would you say that that's fair, that I should therefore ask my employers for a large pay rise?
Not in that sort of way.
Okay.
Now, you know what? If you want a pay rise, just manifest it and allow it to come.
Okay, I'll do that. Now, I know you're not sort of mad into the politics and all that stuff, and who really cares? But we have a future. We're heading towards an election. There is the red of Labour and there is the blue of Conservative. What comes into your mind at this time?
Definitely the blue.
Wow.
Definitely the blue. It was coming to me earlier on. That's why I said I was seeing blue.
So you're basically going against the polls, and I, you know, judging by some of the Brexit polls, I think you might be onto something here. Now, look, the most important question, and the one that everybody really, really wants to know: will Harry and Meghan be attending the coronation?
Right, I've got yes and no cards in here, okay, and I'm going to shuffle them, and I'm going to let the angels show you, okay. They're not all yes and no. But let's see. If it doesn't show you a yes or no, then it hasn't been decided. But I'm going to take this card. It says yes.
Way! So this is good. There's a lot of good news here. Rishi Sunak's going to get in. I'm going to get a massive pay rise. And Harry and Meghan are coming to the coronation, which might be a bit
That's what it says. I don't think, I think there's going to be some discussions. I think there needs to be some talks first. But I do feel that, yeah, he will come.
Have you got, has anything visited you in the last few days that you'd like to share with the nation?
Has anything visited me?
Have you drawn from the ether anything that's worth sharing with people?
Yeah, I have. I do get messages from Spirit, and one of the messages I was getting from Spirit, there's a young lad who's missing at the moment. I don't know if you've heard about the rugby player, Levi Davis.
Right.
Have you heard about him going missing?
Yes.
Well, a while ago, I got some messages coming through. And, yeah, I was really trying to reach out to his mum. But, yeah.
OK, well, we pray for Levi Davis's swift return. Thank you so much, Tracy, for your predictions. Coming up, have the left been left behind? Back in 3,
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Hello again. Apologies if anyone was upset by that final prediction. Now, look, there's not a long way to go, but we will get there. We can only hope, but I don't... Oh, right, this is audience reactions. John says, we can only hope... this is in terms of, is it the end of the woke as we know it? John says, we can only hope, but I doubt it. It's now too ingrained in the establishment. Yeah, but maybe Nicola Sturgeon and Jacinda Ardern and Corbyn, these might be signs that the establishment are getting pushed back against. Alison says, a better way to go. Yeah, but it's a start at least. The mainstream media needs balancing out too. It's not just the politicians screwing with our freedom. Right. I will now go straight to Stephen Pound, who is former Shadow Minister for Northern Ireland. And Stephen, I've been watching... Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
I've been having a look at their Labour Party recently, and they're starting to look vaguely electable.
I'm really worried to hear that.
I know.
Yeah, well, no, we've actually grown up a little bit, to be perfectly honest. And it's very interesting that you're having a discussion, and not just tonight, but, I mean, you lead this in many other areas as well, you know, about this business about woke first and politics. I don't think that there's much of a crossover there. I mean, a lot of the sort of the hard left in the Labour Party were the least woke people you'd ever meet in your life. You know, so
what do you mean?
Well, if you actually have a look at some of the scandals in the TSSA, you know, the Transport Salaried Staff Association, with the behaviour and that, and the GMB being labelled as, you know, misogynist and all those things. So it's not necessarily left and right thing. What is much more insidious, what is much more worrying, what's much concerning, is this kind of assumption that everybody now is terrified about saying anything in case somebody can say something behind it. Look at the idea that people at university, and you assume that if you go to university, you've got a few brain cells, they can't read Chaucer without having a warning. Some of this may shock you.
He gan up her throat, mocking in his frown.
Yeah, and let rip a mighty, like a thunderclappy. But no, this is so tedious, because what it does is it shrinks down the world of experience. It actually reduces human interaction, and it actually makes people ashamed for speaking how they are. Now look, if you harbour views that may be unacceptable to some people, and you keep them to yourself, you end up with a group of like-minded people in a dark beer cellar somewhere, plotting and scheming. You've got to actually get out and talk. Now, if you and I disagree about it, can't we talk about it as two adults, instead of me being terrified that you're going to say that I'm more woke than you?
Well, that's the tradition I thought the left brought into politics, which the idea of free expression, and I noticed that it's been taken out, and I agree with what you're saying. It's not a political problem, it's a cultural problem, which has been brought in through our...
We're not going to agree, are we?
Well, I'm a bit of a... people think I'm some sort of far-right fascist, but I'm actually...
No, good God, no.
I'm a bit of a... I'm quite liberal, and I just like people being able to express their views.
Yeah.
So, in terms... has he made a smart move by just showing the Corbynistas the door? Do you think that was a really good idea?
Well, I don't think there's any alternative, in all honesty. I mean, basically, Jeremy Corbyn was let back into the Labour Party, but he's not got the Labour whip in the House of Commons. And as soon as he said that, the whole anti-Semitism thing had been exaggerated, and then refused to apologise after the HCI report, then, to be honest, he'd placed himself probably where he wants to be. He wants to be the lonely figure, the Messiah, crying in the wilderness. I've known Jeremy for over 40 years, and he's always been a very amiable, charming person. But in all honesty, he couldn't organise his way out of a paper bag. And I think the problem is that kind of soggy romanticism, sentimental leftism, which immediately founders on the rock when you say to them, OK, define socialism. Everybody says, we want more socialism. What do you mean by socialism? And, where's the ideal society in the world which is a socialist society? I mean, the Labour Party is a democratic socialist party. And personally, I would look to Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Estonia. There's lots of countries I would look to. What I wouldn't look to would be Cuba.
Yeah, exactly. And I look to Keir Starmer, and you see his he just was quite awkward and uncomfortable in front of the camera, which is quite crucial as a politician. And he's developed a confidence. And I start to see a real lack of confidence in the Conservatives, and almost like they're ready to lose, and almost like they want to lose.
Well, it's a strange thing. I mean, I was around in '79 when we could see what was rolling down the hill at us. We knew that we were absolutely stuffed. In 2010, I knew that we would just sit there waiting for the old Etonians to come in, but we knew that we'd had it. And I think there's that kind of sea change. But the thing about Keir is I knew him when he was the DPP in Northern Ireland. He did the public prosecutions. Very, very difficult doing politics in Northern Ireland. The minute you say, for example, the north of Ireland, as I said, to Northern Ireland, you're in one camp or the other. Yeah. As soon as they said to me, how do you spell your name? Stephen is one thing, S-T-E, you know what it's like. And somebody said to me, who'd worked with him for a long time, in court he was much, much better talking to the judge than talking to the jury. And I think that was why but he's now changed. He's now realised that you have to up your game, and now he speaks to the jury and the judge. And I think he does it pretty well.
I have to say, I think I agree. I'm dreading 5 years of a Labour government. That's how it is.
If anyone can screw it up, we can.
I know.
We have form.
We agree on that. High five. Thank you, Stephen Pound. Jeremy Corbyn has been banned from standing as Labour Party candidate in the next general election by the leader of the party, Sir Keir Starmer, and has been criticised by Mr Corbyn's supporters for failing to uphold democracy. Anyway, we will be back after this break.
Hello. I used to be John Cleese, and I'm going to be doing some shows for GB News for two reasons. One, they asked me to, and two, they want programming for viewers who are completely out of touch, a much neglected demographic. So stay out of touch with me.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Laurence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News. Narinda.
Hi, Laurence. For future reference, champagne, please.
All right, sorry about that. It's the GB News budget, you should see. But it's quite. Do you think it's an impressive achievement that GB News has managed to get itself on them?
God, I love it. Should I tell you why? I always get people saying, "Why do you go on GB News? They're extreme right wing," and I actually think they let me say what I want to say.
Yeah.
It's free speech. They're fair. It's not what they think it is. I love GB News.
Good for you. That's really nice. But you put up with a lot of grief. But it's kind of, I put up with a lot of grief too, but I think it's sort of, I like using this opportunity to sit and find out things where we may have common ground. So let's start where we do have some common ground, which is COVID. We have the same way
I was so anti-lockdown, anti the lot. In fact, the very first day that the whole, we are going into lockdown, I remember doing a video on my Twitter saying, you can't accept this. We can't be locked up like animals. Please don't accept this. And I lost 3,000 followers overnight.
COVID, we agreed on.
Yeah, we agreed on that because I remember when it all happened in lockdown, I was so against it. I was against masks. I was against schools being... I've got 2 kids, GCSE age. And I thought, you can't actually lock up a whole economy. This is long term. We're going to pay the price, and we're paying the price. But you know what? I lost...
Was it a religious thing? Are you religious? Because I found a lot of religious, all I'm saying is of all religions, I found a lot of religious people very against it. And I wondered whether for you it had a religious element to it or not.
No, not at all.
Right.
No, because
just
actually...
a human individual.
Well, also, I think I was also fortunate. I've lost my mum and dad, I've lost my grandparents, I've lost my brother. So I had no one else to lose. And maybe selfishly, I thought, well, actually, this doesn't affect me. But more importantly, I thought, well, actually, the economy, kids' education, why are kids suffering? Why are you suffering children? We can't do that. But people just went along with it, and it made me mad. And the masks and people running away from each other, honestly, it made me sick.
Right, talking about
it made me mad.
Talking about kids' education.
Yeah.
PSHE, RSE, that they teach in school. They teach concepts of things like gender ideology and white privilege and skin colour privilege, for example, which is called white privilege because England's mostly white. Let's start with gender ideology.
Okay.
I think we both agree on something else, don't we? Which is that we fully support trans people.
I do.
I do too.
Yeah.
But I think I'd be
Why do
interested
people think you don't?
Because I really don't support young people making those sort of huge decisions about their bodies, based mainly around my experience of the own stupid decisions I made when I was little. I still have a tattoo that will never go away. So the thought of mutilating...
Because you're too young to make that decision.
Yeah, and so I suppose, where do you stand on that?
So, okay, children are too young to decide. However, I just support anyone who wants to be included. They want to be accepted. And there's such a small minority. What I don't understand is the media's obsession, everyone's obsession with trans rights, where they're such a tiny percentage. Why are they such a threat to you?
Well, I would argue...
Why are they such a threat?
I would argue that they're not a threat to people. What they are is they're used by a particular movement to create this oppressor-oppressed narrative,
right.
which is what permeates the world. There's what I call woke stuff, which is like someone's a victim and someone is the oppressor of that victim, which brings us neatly on to white privilege.
Okay, so we've gone on the track. That was very quick.
Well, no, it's not quick. I'm just following.
Should I tell you about? Okay,
tell me about white privilege.
I get accused so much, of race baiting and she brings in race all the time.
Did we have a spat the other day?
I don't know.
I think it was Bush Shaker was having a spat with the other day.
Well, no, we have as well.
Yeah.
The thing about racism, it's such a strong word that white people get very fragile and sensitive about it. There's this guilt about it.
Or lose their entire careers as a result of the allegation. Entire career, everything.
But you also had a career because of your white privilege as well.
Not necessarily.
So, well, no, an Asian man of your would not have had the privileges you had. But my point being...
No, because we've got to go at the right speed here. In America and in the UK as well, actually, but certainly in America, Asian people do really, really well.
Only now.
Better than white people.
Only now.
Okay, but America is a young country and is the result of people visiting it. Okay, but hang on. Let's round the point if we can. Okay, and in England, Asian people, especially Indian Asian people, do really well.
Well, Laurence, actually, no. When I came out of Big Brother, 2001, I remember I came out and I was just absolutely annihilated by the press, as were most Big Brother people, actually, whether you were black, white, whatever. I don't know, they just picked on Big Brother people, but they picked on Big Brother people whether you're white, black, or trans, like Nadia was. However, they picked on me, I'd say even more so. I was the first woman of colour that went in that house. And what happened was, I wanted a career after Big Brother. I wanted to be in TV. I made no kind of joke about that, I was serious. And I'd go to BBC, Channel 4, ITV, and they'd say to me, you need to go to the Indian channels. Then I'd go to the Indian channels and they'd say, you're not Indian enough, you need to go back to the white channels.
To be fair, you do kind of sit perfectly in the middle, don't you?
But ITV...
Movie star looks, and it's sort of, and
I know,
you're got other things breaking off the shoulder.
I'll get told to call out my name.
You do look a little bit like someone you'd bump into at a very swanky party in Beverly Hills.
Why did BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5 never accept that?
They were too busy hiring me.
Yeah, exactly.
And all of my white privilege.
But guess what they said? Yeah, they would take the white contestants, but they wouldn't take me because one TV executive actually said to me, well, like entertainment, we need Caucasian people, we need white people, Indian person.
Did they really say that to you?
Really.
So this is where
I guess what they said,
but here's
go
my
and
theory.
do journalism
and
you'll be taken serious as a newsreader, but you will never be taken seriously.
This is where their panic has come from. Because they were racist back in the day, and they were like, well, sorry, babe, you go on the Asian channels and go and speak Asian or something. We're going to hire all the white people.
Yes.
Now they're massively overcompensating by going, we are so sorry for being white and everything
And
we
do you
did.
feel bad about why? Do
I
you
don't
think
feel
that you
bad about
shouldn't?
being white. I'm
why
a total content to character. Colour of skin doesn't bother me for a second.
Well, you say that,
Oh
Laurence.
no, I'm sexually attracted to people of all different skin colours. So it really, if something that visceral, if you can be really like, you know, whoa, to a girl, or sorry, I am heterosexual, I apologise for that as well. But if you can...
Yes, but shall I tell you something,
that
Laurence?
means that I'm not interested in skin colour.
So there was a guy at school that used to call me the P word every single day. And I used to actually fancy him. This was a tragedy of the love story. And I know, it broke my heart. And I'm not going to say his name, actually it was Colin, but I would say his surname. And I loved him. I fancied him. And he called me the P word every single day. By chance, I bumped into him a few years ago. And he said, I couldn't have gone out with you because he goes, I'd go out with you now because he goes, oh my God, you look like Bollywood. Will you go out with me? He said, I didn't then. He goes, because I would have been called a P lover. And he goes, and I really wanted to, but I would have been called a P lover.
But
so
things have changed. Society has changed. Hugely. I've not heard, I'm sure it happens. I'm sure it happens. But I have not heard, and I wander around this multi-diverse, multicultural city of ours.
It's London. This is only London. I'm in Newcastle.
No, I'm not. I don't know about Newcastle or your lived experience.
Yes.
I'm getting there, aren't I?
You are getting there.
I think that society has progressed hugely. And, you know, that's a really wonderful thing. And I don't know, again, where you're saying, why are we using all of these tiny minority of incidents with trans people? I mean, you had what was going on last night, that tragic murder of that young trans person.
But
and they're all stood there going, Keir Starmer. And you're like,
why were they saying that about Keir Starmer? I got confused by that.
I think it's a political... The problem is, what happens is, the sort of Marxist movement, which is the oppressor-oppressed movement, needs little vectors to use. It uses the transgender community, it uses race.
Yes.
And I think once it's moved on from race, it'll go into mental health. That's the next place it's going to go, which will be everybody is...
so they use it for what then?
They use it to further the agenda, to keep it in the newspapers, to make everyone talk about it all the time.
Okay.
That's what I think happens. But take me back to how privileged I am.
The point is that you do have a right to an opinion, but it doesn't mean, let's not negate and dilute the argument of racism. And my point...
Direct racism, not systemic.
So as Prince Harry would say, unconscious bias.
If you're asking me to take
So you're saying only aggressive racism is acceptable?
No. One of the other things that comes with content of character is level of personal, self-knowledge, emotional intelligence, actual intelligence. And I tell you what, Prince Harry doesn't have any of those privileges.
I love Prince Harry.
Of course you love Prince Harry. But
He's learning. He reminds me of you. He likes to learn. He's learning about...
He's learning.
I just think...
But do you see that someone could maybe see what you just said as being a bit patronising?
Patronising, but not racist. Maybe patronising, but I don't want...
Unconscious bias.
I don't want white middle class, middle-aged men.
White or not?
I don't want them to feel so guilty and so fragile and so sensitive about if we say...
We're being attacked.
Well, welcome to the world. Well, welcome to our lives.
We don't attack you.
You do, and you do. Subconsciously, unconsciously.
Never in my life have I turned around.
Maybe you haven't.
And no one I know ever has.
Shall I tell you something? This all comes down to geography.
No, I get it. And you come from Newcastle. And
yes.
I get it. I understand. Times change. And you're a different generation now. But we have made such immense strides as a country. You just have to look at the parliament and how diverse it is. That
doesn't mean anything. Because you've got Rishi Sunak, Priti Patel, Suella Braverman, all of them who actually, just because they're brown and they're they're cabinet ministers, doesn't mean anything to a working class immigrant child daughter like me. Because guess what? And I get accused, this is another word, they say, I don't even know if I can say this.
Say it, we'll bleep it out.
Okay, coconut. And I get accused of being a coconut because of the way I dress. Oh, you're such a coconut, put Indian clothes on.
Hang on, so you're culturally appropriating white norms of dress?
Correct. Right. And actually, you're not really Indian, because look at you sat there with your legs out and your shoulder out and you're drinking a glass of wine. You're a coconut. But actually, I know you want to laugh your head off, but actually, Rishi Sunak and Suella, they stand there like, oh my God, thank God we've got an Indian Prime Minister.
Shouldn't we say all of these things are mean things to say?
But he's not speaking for our
Wouldn't
community.
it be better?
I want to speak for my community.
But isn't your community the British people?
They are also my community. But
Every one of them.
But they,
White, black,
but they don't accept
green.
me. They don't accept me.
I accept
Should
you.
I tell you something about immigration? We should talk about immigration. But they talk about refugees and they talk about, oh, they're legal. And
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll